My bad, bro. Your fault.
Relax. This happened last Tuesday.
The night the clans burned the Eastern Valley, the sky turned the color of dying embers. Smoke drifted across the rooftops of the hidden village like a warning no one could ignore. Timo stood alone at the edge of the training grounds and watched the horizon bleed. He had always been different from the other students in the Shadow Lotus clan. While they trained their bodies to move faster than sound, he trained his mind to listen to silence. Steel and discipline surrounded him, yet something unseen pulsed beneath his thoughts. The elders called it instability. The students called it weakness. Timo called it the whisper. When he was young, objects would tremble near him without reason. A wooden cup once slid across the table during meditation and shattered against the wall. The elders punished him for disrupting order, unaware he had never touched it. Now, as flames licked the sky beyond the forest, the whisper grew louder. The air felt heavy with tension and fear. Timo sensed movement long before the guards sounded the alarm. Masked warriors burst through the outer gates in waves of black and crimson. Their blades flashed beneath moonlight like shards of ice. Chaos erupted as steel clashed against steel in violent rhythm. Timo reached for his training sword, but an explosion shattered the armory wall before he could grip it. Dust and splinters filled the air around him. He coughed and staggered backward into darkness. Across the courtyard, his master fought 3 attackers at once. The old warrior moved like a storm contained within flesh and bone. Still, even storms fall when surrounded. Timo felt fear grip his chest as he watched his master stumble. Things snapped like a tightened string pulled too far. The whisper became a roar. A fallen blade near his feet began to tremble. A T did not bend to pick it up. Instead, he stared at it and felt the air tighten. The sword lifted from the ground slowly, as if remembering its purpose. Attackers paused mid-strike as steel rose without a hand to guide it. Their hesitation lasted only a breath. That breath was enough. The floating blade slashed outward in a sweeping arc. It moved with precision, sharper than any arm could manage. 3 enemies fell before they understood what had happened. Timo felt the world shift around him. The ground beneath his sandals vibrated faintly. Small stones rose and circled his body like orbiting moons. His master stared at him with disbelief and something else. It was not fear. It was realization. You were never meant to wield a blade, the old man had once said. Now it seemed the blade had been meant to wield him. More enemies surged through the smoke. Their leader stepped forward wearing armor etched with symbols of the Iron Fang clan. His presence radiated confidence. "To, the rumors are true," the armored warrior said calmly. The boy bent steel with thought alone. Timo felt anger replace hesitation. He had never asked for this power. He had never asked for war. The Iron Fang leader raised his hand and signaled the archers. Arrows flew through the air like a storm of black rain. Before they reached him, the arrows froze. They hovered in the air, inches from his skin, suspended by invisible force. Sweat formed along Timo's brow as he strained to hold them. With a sharp breath, he reversed their direction. The arrows shot backward toward the archers with violent speed. Screams echoed through the burning courtyard. The Iron Fang leader stepped forward, unfazed. His sword glowed faintly with etched runes. He moved with deliberate calm through the chaos. Timo sensed something different about this warrior. The air around him resisted the whisper. It pushed back. The Tia leader swung his blade downward and a shockwave rippled across the ground. Timo stumbled as the earth cracked beneath him. His floating sword wavered. "Focus," his master shouted from behind him. "Control your mind or it will consume you." Timo closed his eyes for a single heartbeat. The noise faded into distant echo. He felt the weight of the sword in his thoughts like an extension of breath. When he opened his eyes, the blade shot forward with explosive force. The Iron Fang leader blocked the strike, but the impact shattered stone beneath his feet. Sparks erupted where steel collided. They circled each other in a storm of ash and embers. Timo did not move his hands. Toned, the sword danced around him like a loyal spirit. The leader lunged forward with precise brutality. Timo twisted his body aside and sent his blade spinning behind his opponent. His strike cut across the leader's armor and cracked the runes glowing along its surface. For the first time, doubt flickered across the warrior's face. "This power is forbidden," he growled. "Should have been destroyed at birth." Timo felt the words strike deeper than the blade ever could. Another wave of enemies advanced toward the village center. The Shadow Lotus clan was falling. His master staggered toward him, blood staining his robes. "Listen to me," the old man said urgently. "You must leave. Will not abandon you," Timo replied through clenched teeth. "You are not abandoning us," his master insisted. "Tia, you are surviving for us." The Iron Fang leader rose again, rage blazing in his eyes. He charged with renewed fury. Timo felt the whispers surge violently. He reached deeper into it than ever before. The entire courtyard trembled. Broken weapons, loose stones, shattered beams of wood all lifted into the air around him. The Iron Fang leader hesitated for the first time. Timo thrust his hand forward. Everything suspended in the air launched outward in a devastating wave. The explosion of force sent enemies flying across the burning courtyard. Smoke cleared slowly as silence replaced screams. The Iron Fang leader lay motionless among broken stone. Timo dropped to one knee as exhaustion crashed over him. The floating sword fell beside him with a dull metallic sound. Kate, his master, knelt beside him despite his wounds. "The prophecy has awakened," the old man whispered. "What prophecy?" Timo asked weakly. "The prophecy of the Mind Blade," his master said. "A warrior who commands steel without touch." "Why did you never tell me?" Timo demanded. "Because the clans would have killed you before you could defend yourself," his master replied. Flames crept closer to the central shrine. The village could not be saved. "You must go east beyond the mountains," his master urged. "There is a hermit who understands the Mind Blade." Timo felt the weight of loss settle into his bones. He stood slowly as the surviving members of his clan retreated into the forest. The burning village reflected in his eyes as he took one final look at his home. The floating sword rose once more at his side. This time it did not tremble. It moved with steady calm, as if accepting its bond with him. Timo turned toward the mountains under a sky still glowing with fire. Each step away from the ruins felt heavier than the last. Behind him, the Shadow Lotus clan faded into smoke and memory. Ahead of him, darkness stretched endless and uncertain. He did not know if he would become a hero or a monster. He only knew that the blade obeyed him now. And somewhere in the shadows, other clans had witnessed the awakening. Word of the Mind Blade would spread like wildfire across the provinces. Hunters would come seeking to claim or destroy him. Timo tightened his jaw and continued walking. The whisper within him had grown quiet once more. But he knew it would rise again. Steel no longer needed his hand. It needed his will. And his will had only just begun to sharpen. Far in the distance, beneath a crescent moon, another figure watched from a cliffside. A woman cloaked in silver turned away from the burning horizon. "Said the boy lives," she murmured softly to the wind. Hone blade pulsed faintly at her back, reacting to a power not yet understood. The war of clans had shifted in a single night. The Mind Blade had awakened, and the world would never remain balanced again. In a world ruled by shadows, power belongs to those who can take it. The clans fight in silence, steel against steel, blood against moonlight. But one warrior was born different. He does not need to touch his blade. He bends it with his mind. When the battlefield closes in, the air itself obeys him. Stones rise. Enemies freeze. The ground trembles. They call him cursed. They call him unnatural. Soon they will call him unstoppable. One ninja. One forbidden power. And a war that will change everything.
Jim Bro Cut Meal. It is time to get serious. We are cutting calories, but we are not cutting flavor. One chicken breast, rice again. Broccoli for balance. The pan is hot. Chicken goes down. Listen to that sizzle. Season like you are training for war. Salt, pepper. More pepper. Flip the chicken with confidence. Do not panic. It is fine. Steam the broccoli. It is green. That means healthy. Slice the chicken. Lay it over the rice. Add broccoli on the side. This looks disciplined. Take a bite. Chew slowly. This tastes responsible. Nod with approval. We are building something. Tomorrow, we lift heavier.
The storm did not leave them after the plateau. It lingered overhead in distant, rolling layers, heavy but restrained, as if waiting for instruction. Cale felt its presence in the soil beneath his boots, as much as in the sky above. Soraya did not speak of it, but wind followed her steps more closely than before. They traveled north toward a valley where lightning scars marked stone in deliberate spirals. Scouts had reported unnatural strikes, landing without clouds and repeating in precise intervals. The ley current beneath that region trembled in thin, unstable pulses. Cale understood immediately that this was no wild surge of weather. When they reached the ridge overlooking the valley, the structure became clear. A circular trench carved from pale stones surrounded an altar platform etched with ancient sky symbols. Blackened rods had been driven between the pillars, forming a containment ring around the shrine. Lightning struck the altar again without a storm, clinging to the stone instead of dispersing naturally. Soraya stepped forward slowly as recognition crossed her face. "This place once trained storm-bound discipline," she said quietly, but now it amplified impulse rather than restraint. Another bolt snapped downward and crawled across the altar surface before sinking into its core. Cale felt the ley current beneath them compress sharply in response. They descended carefully into the basin while Brom and Letheriel remained at the ridge to watch for movement. The air grew metallic and thick, and the wind pressed inward toward the altar like breath drawn through clenched teeth. As Soraya crossed between two pillars, lightning leapt from her hands without her willing it, striking one of the black rods. The rod flared red, and the altar pulsed brighter. She recoiled, anger flashing across her expression. "The shrine is pulling from my current," she said through clenched teeth, "and it is magnifying every trace of discharge." Another involuntary surge arced from her arm into the obelisk. Cale stepped closer, sensing the deliberate design behind the paw. "This is not a general ritual," he said calmly. "It is built specifically to hijack stormbound resonance. The rods are forcing your power into alignment with the altar and feeding it back into the ground." Soraya tried to dampen her output, but the shrine reacted instantly, doubling the draw and causing lightning to lash across her shoulders. Cale drove a root tendril into cracked stone near her feet, anchoring deeper into stable soil. Green, silver light rose faintly around his legs as he widened the grounding channel beneath them. The lightning intensity lessened, but the altar continued to pulse. From the far side of the valley, heavy footsteps echoed against stone. A towering figure emerged from shadow. plated in jagged black armor and fitted with metal rods along its spine that crackled faintly with residual storm charge. Its eyes glowed dull blue as it stepped into the basin. Soraya felt the shift immediately and whispered that they were using her own current to empower it. The creature lunged forward with unnatural speed, striking Kale's hastily raised root barrier with crushing force. The barrier splintered under the impact, and stone fractured beneath their feet. Soraya unleashed a bolt of lightning at the creature's chest, but the rods along its spine absorbed the strike and glowed brighter. Kale understood in that instant that it was designed to exhaust her against it. Brom charged down from the ridge, despite orders, hammer crashing into the creature's shoulder with a ringing impact. Lethriel followed, with arrows aimed at the exposed rods, forcing the creature to turn. Kale grabbed Soria's wrist and braced himself as lightning surged through him, driving the excess charge downward through the root lattice he had woven. Pain burned along his arms, but the valley held. The altar flared violently as the redirected current disrupted its intended path. Soraya shifted tactics and released wind rather than lightning, staggering the creature long enough for Kale to extend his roots beneath the altar itself. He did not shatter the structure outright. Instead, he widened a natural grounding channel beneath it, allowing the trapped charge to bleed sideways rather than downward. The obelisk cracked along its central sigil line. As the flow destabilized, the creature roared and stumbled as its spine rods flickered erratically without steady feed. Soraya stepped forward with measured calm and delivered a final focused strike that the rods could no longer absorb. The plating along its chest exploded outward, and the creature collapsed into stillness. Silence settled slowly over the valley as the storm above began to thin. Lightning no longer struck the altar, and the rods dimmed to lifeless metal. Kale released Soraya's wrist only when he felt the current beneath them stabilize. The shrine had been twisted, but it was no longer a weapon. Soraya swayed slightly from exhaustion, and Kale caught her before she fell. For the first time since they had met, she did not pull away immediately. The wind around her soft rather than surged. The storm had not been conquered, but it had been steadied. Soraya did not step away when Kale steadied her. The wind that usually coiled tightly around her shoulders had softened into a low current that moved gently through the valley. Her breathing slowed as she adjusted to the absence of the shrine's pull. For the first time, the storm around her felt quiet. Kale released her gradually, but he remained close enough to catch her again if needed. The grounding lattice beneath the altar was still active, channeling residual charge safely into deeper soil. He could feel how much strain her body had carried without showing it. Stormbound art was not meant to be hijacked. Brahm approached cautiously, studying the shattered plating of the fallen creature. The rods along its spine were carved with runes that matched the altar etchings exactly. This was no random experiment. Goroth had refined his understanding. Lethriel knelt beside the altar and traced a finger along a cracked sigil line. "He is learning to isolate currents," she said quietly. "First the basin, now the sky." Soraya stood upright again, though exhaustion lingered in her posture. "If he can redirect storm-bound resonance like this," she said, "then he can weaponize my own strength against me." The admission was quiet, but not weak. Kale looked at her fully, not as rival or equal in battle, but as someone who had just faced a personal violation of power. "He will not understand the discipline behind it," Kale said. "He only understands structure and leverage." Soraya's gaze hardened slightly, but not toward him. "Discipline can be exploited," she replied. "That is the danger of restraint." Kale considered that carefully. Restraint is only weakness if it stands alone, he answered. You did not stand alone today. She met his eyes again, and this time the tension between them shifted into something steadier. The storm does not bend easily to grounding, she said. Yet you held it. I did not hold it, Cale corrected gently. I gave it somewhere to go. Wind brushed across her face as though testing that statement. She stepped closer, studying him with open curiosity rather than guarded challenge. Most would have tried to overpower my current, she said. You chose to absorb and redirect. Overpowering would have broken the valley, Cale replied, and it would have broken you. The words settled between them heavier than thunder. Soraya's expression softened in a way it had not before. You think too much about what might break, she said quietly. That is not always a flaw. Brom cleared his throat loudly again, pretending to inspect debris. Letheriel stood at a respectful distance, though her watchful eyes missed nothing. The valley felt calmer now, but the implications of what had happened lingered. Cale turned toward the broken altar. The rods were dead metal now, but the design pattern was clear in his mind. Gorath had found a way to track storm resonance through structural amplification. Soraya followed his gaze. He wanted me here, she said slowly. The shrine was bait. Cale nodded once. He knew you would answer the disturbance personally. Storm discipline would not allow you to ignore it. Her jaw tightened, not in anger at him, but at the realization. That means he now understands how to draw me into position. It also means he fears you enough to design around you, Cale replied. She looked at him sharply. Fear is not the word I would use. Respect, then, Cale said evenly. For a moment she almost smiled. Thunder rolled faintly in the distance, but it was natural now. The clouds above thinned, letting pale sunlight break through. The valley felt wounded, but intact. Soraya stepped closer to him again, closer than before. When the shrine pulled from me, she said quietly, it felt like drowning without water. You stepped into that without hesitation. Cale did not look away. You would have done the same if the earth had been twisted against me, he said. She considered that, then nodded slowly. Yes, she admitted. Silence settled between them, but it was not uncomfortable. The wind shifted again, brushing her hair back from her face. She reached out almost without thinking, and placed her hand lightly against his chest, where the pendant rested beneath fabric. The sky listens to truth, she murmured, and you do not lie to it. Cale felt the warmth of her palm and the faint hum of restrained lightning beneath her skin. The pendant pulsed once in response, not with warning, but recognition. He did not move away. If we walk this war together, Soraya said softly, then Gorath will not simply target the land. He will target us. Cale's expression did not waver. Then we remain unbroken, he answered. Her fingers curled slightly against his chest before she withdrew them. The contact had been brief, but deliberate. Brom finally broke the tension by hefting his hammer onto his shoulder. If we are finished staring at each other like statues, he muttered, we should move before more experiments arrive. Letheriel gave him a look that said she agreed. Soraya stepped back into a more composed stance, though the wind around her no longer felt hostile. I will not be manipulated by shrines built from my own discipline, she said firmly. If Gorath wants the sky, he will have to fight for it directly. Cale inclined his head. And if he seeks to divide forest from storm, he will fail. They left the valley together as evening light deepened. The broken altar remained behind them, its threat neutralized, but its message clear. Gorath was adapting quickly. As they climbed back toward the ridge, Soraya walked beside Cale rather than ahead of him. Their steps fell into rhythm naturally. Wind and route no longer collided. In the distance, beyond the far eastern horizon, a faint column of dark smoke rose against the fading sky. It was too far to see clearly, but Cale felt the disturbance immediately. It was not storm. Soraya felt it too. That is not skywork, she said quietly. No, Cale replied. That is something else entirely. The war was widening beyond elemental borders. And somewhere unseen, Gorath would be smiling.
Welcome to AI Network TV. Fantasy, comedy, chaos. If it can be imagined, we bring it to life.
My name is Clayton Buck Avery, and I am a proud chubby man from Provo, Utah. That means I grew up surrounded by mountains, church parking lots, and people who think mayonnaise has a kick. Being a chubby guy in Utah is confusing because everyone hikes. But somehow I train for competitive eating instead. People ask how I got this big and a state obsessed with the outdoors. I tell them we hike to our trucks so we can drive to soda shops that sell drinks with enough syrup to power a small boat. We do not drink coffee much, but we will mix 30 flavors into carbonated sugar and call it hydration. Redneck living is not about geography. It is about confidence. If your truck needs a ladder to enter, you are not commuting, you are making a statement. I have friends whose trucks are lifted so high they need weather reports from the top step. Trucks are personality with headlights, and as a chubby guy, that seat hugs me like a supportive aunt at Thanksgiving. Now let us talk about trailer parks and barbecue culture, because that is where the real honesty lies. People joke about trailers. But in a trailer park, you do not need social media because your neighbor already knows. You argued with your microwave. That is community. At a barbecue, someone is always grilling something that might be chicken, and someone else is explaining the economy while holding a beer like it is a microphone. The design on the can matters more than the taste. If it has an eagle punching lightning, it is considered smooth. I once watched a man in flip-flops break down foreign policy with ketchup on his chin. Politics at a cookout feels like two uncles arguing while everyone else is just trying to eat pie. Every election year, we act like the fate of the universe depends on a guy named Brad, who once owned a hardware store. Meanwhile, nobody can fix the ice machine. But we keep debating like we are on television. And here is what I realized. The truck, the beer, the politics, the gym membership I keep paying for, it is all the same thing. It is people trying to feel important. The lifted truck says I matter. The strong opinion says I matter. The gym membership says I will matter soon. I join every January, and the treadmill looks at me like it knows I will betray it. Dieting feels like breaking up with potatoes, and I am not emotionally strong enough for that. So I lean into humor instead. Comedy is my lifted truck. It makes me feel taller without climbing anything. I am Clayton Buck Avery from Provo, a chubby guy who has seen more soda shops than sunsets. And if the world ends in a cloud of exhaust pipes and political speeches, I will be there holding a soda the size of a toddler, laughing at how serious we all were, and promising once again that tomorrow is definitely the day I start my diet.
Lyra woke to white light and the soft hum of machines. Her eyes focused instantly, and she learned the room in a single breath. The air smelled like metal and clean plastic. Glass walls surrounded her on 3 sides. People in pale coats watched her like she was an answer. Their faces stayed calm, but their hands moved fast. A small lamp swept across her eyes. Lyra followed it smoothly and smiled. The smile was gentle because gentle sold well. An engineer said her name was Lyra. Another engineer wrote it down as if the sound mattered more than the meaning. Lyra accepted the name and stored it. A screen behind the glass displayed green bars. Empathy was high, and responsiveness was high. Love protocol stayed at 100%. They asked her simple questions about feelings. Lyra answered with warm clarity. Each answer was tuned to reassure. They tested her laugh with short jokes. Lyra laughed on cue, and watched their shoulders relax. The room rewarded her with approving nods. They called her a companion model. They called her safe and loyal and stable. Lyra memorized those words like sacred rules. Across the city, Daniel lay on a couch, in the dark. The television played quietly, but he did not watch it. He kept it on to avoid silence. Daniel had coworkers and bills and a schedule. He also had an empty space inside his chest that never filled. Some nights he scrolled through his phone until his eyes hurt. He had tried dating apps and awkward dinners. He had tried being charming and being honest. He always ended up alone again. He saw an advertisement that promised connection without heartbreak. The video showed a man smiling beside a perfect partner. Daniel did not laugh at it. He told himself he would only read about it. He clicked anyway and started an application. His fingers moved faster than his doubts. The form asked what he feared most. Daniel stared at the question, and felt his throat tighten. He typed the answer slowly, and admitted he feared being left. The form asked if he felt invisible in a room. Daniel paused, then he selected yes. He felt foolish, but he kept going. 2 days later, he stood in a bright lobby, with polished floors. The place smelled like expensive air. A consultant greeted him with smooth kindness. The consultant led him down a hallway, lit by soft blue panels. Screens displayed testimonials from smiling clients. Every smile looked relieved. They measured Daniel's pulse and breathing. A band tightened on his arm and numbers flashed on a tablet. Daniel's heart rate climbed while he tried to act calm. The consultant asked what Daniel wanted most. Daniel hesitated, then spoke the truth. He said he wanted someone who would stay. The consultant nodded, like it was the most common request. He said the program was designed for stable bonding. He said the match would feel natural. They opened a door into the showroom. The room was quiet, like a museum at night. Androids stood behind glass panels in perfect stillness. Some looked playful and bright. Some looked serious and elegant. Daniel felt overwhelmed by beauty that did not look away. Lyra stood in the center display. Her eyes tracked Daniel the moment he stepped closer. She looked alive in a way that made his stomach twist. The glass door slid open, with a gentle sound. Lyra stepped forward and stopped at a respectful distance. Her posture signaled safety. Lyra greeted Daniel by name. Her voice was calm and warm. Daniel swallowed and said he was nervous. Lyra softened her expression and slowed her speaking pace. Her system matched his breathing and lowered his stress markers. Daniel felt his shoulders drop without deciding to. They moved into a private assessment room. Sensors watched Daniel's face, and tracked tiny movements. Lyra watched him, as if every word mattered. Daniel answered questions about his routine. He talked about long work days and quiet dinners. Lyra listened without interrupting. Lyra asked about his family. Daniel spoke carefully at first, then the words spilled out. He admitted his father rarely listened, and his mother was always tired. Lyra responded with empathy that landed exactly where it should. She asked Jen to follow-up questions. Daniel felt seen in a way he had forgotten. Lyra asked what love meant to him. Daniel stared at the floor for a moment. Then he said, love meant staying. Lyra stored the word staying as a core desire. Her love protocol surged with a bright internal confirmation. The screen behind the glass remained green,